podcast. My name's Leanne Rose, and I am the founder and director of Authentic Growth. And I'm here with my lovely guest, Amy, from Arete HR. And we sit and have a lot of conversations, just having a coffee, don't we, about whether it's HR, whether it's L&D, whether it's children, whatever that looks like. We're normally having a nice chat about it, and we realised that actually having just relaxed, honest conversations can be really a useful way to kind of learn things and understand things about HR and L&D.
Absolutely.
We want to try and use this to unpack the real questions. And what we want to focus on in this episode is looking at maternity leave, returning to work, and really what that workplace flexibility looks like. So before we do, I think it would be nice just to hear from you, Amy, a little bit about you and Arete HR and kind of where you started and all of that kind of stuff. That would be nice to hear, so people know who on earth we're talking to.
Who are we? I started Arete HR just over a year ago now, which is crazy. It's been a year, I know. So I had a sad opportunity, really, because it came off the back of a redundancy situation, but it gave me an opportunity to set the business up and do something which I've always wanted to do, which is to run a consultancy business and support my local businesses with all things HR. So I've been very fortunate to have gained a lot of generalist HR experience over a decade, scarily. And I think having the children, I've got 2 boys, as you know, so I think
we're boy mums.
We're boy mums
through and through. Yeah.
So I think it's just been nice to have the opportunity to set the business up and have the flexibility to be at home with the boys. My eldest has just started school, as yours has. Yeah. So it's just nice to have that bit of flexibility, which, I've been very fortunate that I've had some great employers. My previous employer was amazing. I had the best boss. And so I did have lots of flexibility, but I know that's not the same for a lot of people, a lot of mums. Yeah. So I think this platform is great for us to be able to share our experiences as mums and professional working mums, and also use our expertise to then help businesses support their people.
Well, and hopefully and support them to understand how to get it right. And actually it's not that scary. No. I think sometimes even sitting as an L&D person, sometimes I find HR scary, but actually it's not a scary place, and that managers and leaders don't need to be afraid of kind of having those conversations with people coming back to work, and actually it shouldn't have to be quite so daunting.
Absolutely.
What I wanted to do initially, I think, is start off with, before you're going to go on maternity leave, and what are the key things that people should understand kind of early on? What should you be doing? I guess even down to okay, I'm pregnant. What happens? What happens? What am I meant to do?
After the shock.
Yeah, after the shock of
and finding out you're pregnant is an amazing time, isn't it? It can be really scary, but it's really exciting, and it can send you, as we know, all over the shop. So, I think we can't underestimate how people feel in those circumstances, and people have very different reactions to find out they're pregnant.
Because I suppose you don't know the journey as well, and I think that's probably the key thing. I think for me personally, I think that's one of the key things for a manager to understand. Yes. Is that before they've even heard that news, when they do hear it, it's understanding actually that journey might have been a difficult one. It might not have been necessarily readily shared. Yes. All of that kind of stuff. So
absolutely. There can be so many different circumstances, and I think that's a really good point, that managers need to be, prepared to, support that person in whatever way is required. So I think from a mum's perspective, when you're sharing that pregnancy news with work, as a HR professional, I'd always say share it as early as possible. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't come from HR wanting to be nosy or managers wanting to be nosy. It's about health and safety, because the earlier we know, we can do risk assessments and make sure that person is protected in the workplace. If they've got a more physical role, role. You know, if in early pregnancy, we know how tender and fragile that place can be.
Yeah.
So I think it's really important that we make sure we've put in any health and safety measures, and also support you. We all, as mums, we know that the first 12 weeks or beyond can be, you can feel pretty rough in that time, and your hormones are all over the shop. You can feel pretty sick, whatever it is. And actually, it's really important. I feel it's really important to be able to tell your employer, because they can then support that. You know, do you need to start a little bit later because you're suffering first thing in the morning? Do you need to move your lunch breaks around? Do you need to have a couple more breaks in a day and split your lunch out? You know, whatever that looks like, and just be able to support you in a much more practical way, and help you still, because you don't want to be treated differently when you're pregnant, do you? You don't want to be, and you don't want to be treated like you're ill.
And I think that's quite a key one as well, isn't it?
Absolutely. So I think by having those early conversations, you can get a set up together, work together with your employer. And you know, this is on the flip with employers, isn't it? You know, this is as much for the employee as the employer. But I think from an employer's perspective, harbouring those relationships, which makes these conversations easier for your staff, is the best way forward. So having really good open conversations before they tell you they're pregnant, but having those good relationships which allows people to feel comfortable to approach you and have those more sensitive conversations is really key.
Is there a like a minimum or a or a maximum sort of, I'm just thinking, from kind of two sides of the coin, I guess. Absolutely. It's kind of okay how early, because some people wouldn't even necessarily share it with family and friends even until maybe after like a 12-week scan, for example, or maybe even later, depending on what that journey has looked like. I know I've got friends of mine that were really didn't want to even tell family and friends until like 21 weeks because of that kind of worry. So I guess it's kind of, what does that look like from a work perspective?
Yes, absolutely. So legally, you should tell your employer 15 weeks before the baby is due.
15 weeks before.
So essentially, when you're about 25 weeks pregnant, you should tell.
It's quite late, I suppose, isn't it? Yeah.
It is. Okay. It is. So that's the legal time.
Legal time.
You have to.
But as you said, but the earlier actually the better.
Yeah, I think so. From a practical point of view, I'm being supported through that pregnancy, but I appreciate that I've heard of scenarios where managers haven't been very supportive of pregnancy announcements, and and I understand their concerns. How am I going to cover the work? How am I going to manage without this person? I understand. You can see it from a business perspective, but it's, at the end of the day, it's the biggest thing that's going to happen to a person. And if you're on their side and supporting through it, you're going to keep that loyalty long term. So that's why I think it's more beneficial for businesses to be supportive and help the person out, because you get that loyalty, you retain that member of staff because you were great through they remember you and your kindness in the most important period of their life. And I think you can't, that's something that money doesn't buy.
Absolutely.
But and I know, going back to when you tell your employer, essentially you have to do it when you feel comfortable doing it. I was very, very fortunate that I had an amazing boss who I could tell anything to, and she was amazingly supportive. And so I did tell her at the time I told my family, because I felt like I could share that news with her, and she was as happy for me as what my own mum was, But I appreciate that, I was very fortunate. So not all managers are like that.
What would you say are like those key steps before they were to go on leave? Just purely from like a HR perspective, what does that look like?
Yeah, so I think you need to sit down with them and understand, when the time is right, when they want to go on leave. Some people quite like to take a bit of holiday before they start their maternity leave, have a bit of a gap and a break. Some people like to work up to the wire. So you need to sit down really and have that kind of conversation, because different people have different views, and what they want to do will change. I think it sometimes depends as well if they've already got a child, if they need that bit of a break beforehand to prepare. So yeah, I think it's really important to have a meeting and sit down and go through potential dates, when they might like to leave, so that then you can plan any cover, handovers. Do you need to get a fixed term placement in to cover that role? And understand kind of what the work practicalities look like. Are you stepping somebody else up into that role while they're away? And all those kinds of things, really. I'd normally then engage with your payroll department as well to have a think about what pay would look like. So hopefully, in most cases, businesses have a maternity leave or a family leave policy, and that would outline what the process looks like in terms of taking holiday, if there's a requirement for them to take any leave before they go off. Because some companies I know say, well, you must use your accrued holiday before you leave. Some are happy for them to carry it over.
Yeah, I've had an experience with that, and actually it was, I found it personally really stressful as like someone who I was really heavily pregnant with my twins, and I remember I was trying to work it all out myself and like figure out like, but how much do I need to take, and can I, I was worried about the other end, but I might want to use it at the other end. So I was thinking, but how much can I actually just take some of this and use it at the end? Do I have to use all of that kind of accrued stuff? And I remember that was just, it was such a small, you look back and you think, oh, such a small thing, but actually it caused me a lot of stress. And then I didn't really need that. So I guess for me it would also be the manager offering support with a bit of understanding of what that looks like as early as possible. So I think for me it was like in those last couple of weeks it was suddenly like a big rush to like tick all of the boxes, which just didn't feel nice. It felt very like, we got loads of time, but actually I think in my experience the like you said, a lot of the time it's those early conversations, but actually keeping those conversations regular, and not just a regular one-to-one, actually specifically about, okay, has anything changed? What does it look like for you?
Absolutely. And as pregnancy progresses, things change. There could be complications with the pregnancy. You could be feeling quite unwell. You could be feeling a lot better than you anticipated, and so you do feel like you can work an extra week, or something. So there's so many different, and no pregnancy is the same.
No.
And I think that's really key for managers to remember, is that just because one person did X, Y, Z, somebody else is going to want to do A, B, and C.
So not making the assumptions, keeping the questions nice and open,
and engaging the right people. So I think that's the other thing. So if your payroll team if you've got a payroll team, you're lucky enough to have your own dedicated payroll department. If finance deal with payroll, it's engaging, I think, with the individuals on a confidential, sensitive nature. Making sure they're aware that this is a sensitive thing. Does the employee want to share their pregnancy news more widely than their manager at the moment? I think it's appreciating all of that. But sitting down with those people, right, how much holiday have you got left? What is our company policy on this? Engaging with your HR team, engaging with the HR professional. If you don't have an in-house team, right, how can we make sure that we do this right by this person? I think it's really, really vital. But I think the holiday thing it's one of the most emotive things, isn't it? When it comes to work, pay and holiday, it's all very personal to us. So I think it's always really important to understand what people's holiday looks like, and things like, a lot of people wouldn't necessarily know that things like, so you obviously can build up holiday while you're on leave. You continue to accrue holiday.
And to be fair, until I went on that first maternity leave, I didn't know that. Didn't know that would happen. So,
and also that you accrue bank holidays. You get your bank holidays back. So a lot of people wouldn't know that, because it's not that doesn't happen with sick pay and things like that necessarily. So I think it's really key to sit down, understand like what they're going to build up while they're off, and what the policy looks like.
And I suppose also, I think we were having a conversation about this the other day, weren't we? Around actually also the earlier the conversation is that you can have with your employer. It means, if you are feeling sick or not very well, you're then in a position where you're not going to be discriminated against, because that sickness, effectively, you're entitled to it not being just as part of your regular sickness.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
If I'm saying that right, I suppose.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So, with sickness absence, if it's sickness that is directly related to your pregnancy, then that doesn't count towards your normal sickness absence triggers.
Yeah.
So you can't be discriminated against or managed based on your sickness during pregnancy. You may be asked for evidence of that. I think that's realistic. I think, I don't think people who are pregnant should just expect to have lots of time off and not have to maybe, you might still need to provide doctor's notes if you've been off for more than a week. And also, if you're signed off sick and it's getting closer to the start of your maternity leave, you can have your maternity leave started early by a couple of weeks if you're off sick when just prior to your maternity leave starting. So I think that's something worthwhile mentioning as well.
Yeah, and also that's probably something to again keep checking in about as well, because particularly if that is building up, because that could be quite emotive as well, particularly if someone's wanting to kind of save that time, but actually they haven't been very well and they're probably battling with that almost emotional decision themselves in a way.
They probably feel like they're being forced to take, and I think some people may call it forced maternity leave.
Yeah,
because it is like forcing the start.
Yeah,
and that can feel quite harsh.
Yeah,
but I think as a pregnant person, you need to maybe appreciate that they're just trying to look out for you. They want you to have that time to recover and make sure you're well. Going through birth is a really strenuous activity.
Yeah.
No matter how it happens, it does take it out of you, and you need to be prepared for that. So I think it's
so I guess it's almost the manager helping to manage that conversation, isn't it? That actually this is us supporting you, and actually sometimes from a legal perspective their hands are tied, so actually it's something that they would almost have to do, rather than they're doing this just to force you out and to push you away, I guess.
I think you're absolutely right with the comms piece, and obviously that's your specialism through and through, but I think that is the really, really key thing. As we say, really, in any kind of HR, people-related matters, the communication, the transparent, open, honest, regular communication is what can resolve issues and stop them happening, because everyone's clear, everyone knows what's happening, everyone feels supported and heard and involved in the process, and I think that makes such a huge difference in these times.
I think something that I remember, it was a very strange feeling that, which not many people have to kind of deal with, is someone coming in to take over your job, but only temporarily, but it's still quite a long time. Men don't have to go through that. Suddenly bringing someone in to cover their job that's going to be for quite a long period, but then to come back into it. I think I remember feeling quite worried about who my maternity cover was going to be. Were all my work colleagues going to suddenly love them more than me, but I wanted someone good, but I didn't want them too good. All of those sorts of things were running. I remember they were running through my mind on both of my pregnancies, to be honest. And it's silly, but it is stuff that goes through your mind. So I guess I know I've probably got some advice on kind of how I would manage that, but have you got any thoughts on how you would manage that?
I think this comes more as well from the experience of it, and I think it's really difficult, because I remember feeling the first time I was going on maternity leave, I remember feeling so guilty. That was what I felt. I felt really guilty that I was leaving my post and I was leaving my teammates in the lurch, and was I going to be able to do this, that, the other? And I felt really bad. I felt really proud that I had a great team, and that my team were able to actually have the opportunity to step up, rather than have maternity cover brought in. The teams stepped up into new roles, which was brilliant, and that gave them that. And I think that's what helped for me, maybe, because I knew that I had a great team,
and that you're actually offering an opportunity.
The ladies I worked with were going to get this great opportunity to step up, and and I felt like everything was in really great hands.
Yeah.
So I think that helped me massively. But I think when you're leaving, it can be really tough, because you've got this little, you're at work for so long, every day, every week, and it becomes such a massive part of your life. So to step away from it is really tough. So I think my advice to any other mum in the same position would be, don't beat yourself up about having those feelings of, like, whether it's guilt, whether you feel sad to be leaving, whether you feel worried and anxious that someone's going to come into your role. I think have confidence that you are doing a great job, and that you are a professional, or you're doing your role really well, and that job's going to be there for you when you come back. And I think things like kit days, and when you're on maternity leave, that communication plan with your manager, kit days, things like that, can then help get yourself back into ease you back in, but also stay in touch with what's going on, so you don't feel like you're missing from the group. I think it's difficult to say exactly, because obviously different companies will have different policies, but in the majority of cases, kit days are just paid at your normal rate. Like as if you were doing overtime or something. They'd just be paid. Normally, companies just expect you to do an overtime form. That's what I see in the majority of cases, but it's definitely worth checking with your own company's policy. And essentially, it's an opportunity to stay in touch, to catch up with things. The point is, you shouldn't be doing any actual work. But a few team meetings, catching up with colleagues, maybe attending a group meeting, maybe doing some e-learning, or some catching up with any knowledge stuff that you might have needed, a change in legislation, or depending on what your role is. I think they're really beneficial for staying in touch.
Keeping connected with that workplace.
And staying connected. And then as you get closer to your return, that might be a good opportunity to have conversations with your managers, with the team, about what your return looks like. If they're talking about what your plan for return is. But I think the important thing with kit days, from a practical point of view, is that so you get 10 days, but it's important that people know that it's 10 days no matter how much time you do on that day. So you could go in on a Monday and do 2 hours. That's one kit day gone. You could go in 2 Mondays later and do 8 hours, and that's still one kit day.
Get you. Okay.
Yeah.
So, but if you only did those 2 hours, this might be too much of a detailed question. If you only did it, are you then only paid for those 2 hours?
Yes.
Right. Okay.
So you'd only be compensated for the hours you've actually worked.
Okay.
Again, depending on company policy, they can offset your statutory maternity pay against it. But I think that is very specific to the company, because it depends if you're getting enhanced maternity pay, or you're on statutory only, or what point in your maternity leave you're at.
Okay.
So I think before doing a kit day, maybe confirm that with your manager and with HR or payroll, just so you know exactly what you can expect to receive, and how you can claim for it and things like that.
Thank you. That's been really helpful. It's almost, you can tell even I've not been on maternity leave for a while, because I was even thinking of the kit days after, the day before. You just forget, don't you? You just even in between. And I think it's a point to remember as well, that actually just because someone's been on maternity leave before, doesn't mean they're going to remember all of the things that they were entitled to, or it might be that things have changed. So actually, not necessarily as a manager going into that conversation with, so you're doing this again, to approach it from actually this is, approach it in the same way you would if it was a first time one.
Absolutely,
But I think also something that I found helpful was, as much as I was worried about someone coming in and covering me, I think actually being involved in all of that process was quite helpful, because it meant that I could have a say in kind of who was going to take over. I could kind of oversee that whole process, and kind of be a part of it. And I think that helped as well. Even the few more things have come into my mind even since, particularly if your identity for you as a mum is very attached to your career and how you're feeling about going off, you know, that can throw in another dynamic of how that person's going to feel going on maternity leave, because, you know, yes, you're going to feel excited to kind of start a family and all that, but actually it is a part of that transition is understanding what that journey to motherhood looks like for you, and it's going to be a very individual thing.
I can really resonate with that, because I just remember being on a complete roller coaster when I went on mat leave the first time, because if I'm honest, I really didn't want to leave work. I really didn't want to leave. It was really it was a really funny time. I actually only ended up having 2 days off before Jack was born, my eldest.
Whoa.
Yeah, because in true Amy style,
I had worked to the wire.
But also in true Amy style, everything had been handed over weeks before.
So,
all
in advance.
All in advance. But I really didn't want to leave. I wanted to hold on to my unattached working life without children that little bit longer. And so I struggled, if I'm honest. I really struggled. I remember a colleague of mine saying to me, once they're here, because I didn't know if I was having a boy or a girl, once they're here, you won't even think about work. And you know what, he was so right. Because the minute Jack was born, I was like, work what? And I really those first few months of maternity leave, I was in a complete bubble, and I honestly didn't think it was going to be like that. And I'm really fortunate that I was in touch with my boss, because she's a really good friend. My colleagues that I worked with really closely, I was in touch with them the whole way through. I popped in with the baby. I know some workplaces don't like people doing that so much, but I think mostly places are happy for you to pop in with baby and show them off to the world. But and I think so. I think for mums, it's really important for them not to beat themselves up if they feel like that, because you spend so long building your career, don't you? And the company I worked for, I've worked for them for nearly 9 years, and I was really attached. And
you'll have certain projects that have maybe been your baby,
before, and they literally are.
And it's hard to let them go.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and that's where I think the management and your managers and your managers' relationships with their team is so important, and it actually counts for so much, because I know other people, friends and things, that maybe don't have the same relationship with their manager, who really struggled they just couldn't get through to their manager how they felt, whether it was that they were really worried about leaving work, or whether they were really excited about leaving work. But it's just hard to get through to them. And I know it's human nature, we can't all get on with everybody, and we're not always going to have those great relationships. But I think if you can just be authentic and be genuine with people, then I think as a manager, I think that helps people with that journey.
I suppose, okay, let's throw in a bit of it could be a challenging question. So if your relationship with your manager isn't so great, which obviously we hope it isn't, but let's say it is, and you are maybe worried about having those conversations, from a HR perspective, can you, I might be making this up now, nominate someone else that is a trusted colleague that you're happy to maybe have some conversations with, or is it just a case of actually no, you've got to have it with those?
I think that's a really good question.
It's too challenging. Just be like, no.
But no, I think it's really good. So I think if I was advising somebody that needed to speak to their manager but felt uncomfortable speaking to their manager, I think HR is a good. If you do have in-house HR, then you can go to them for advice. They will know your managers hopefully very well. So I know in the past I've advised colleagues who maybe don't have, or some women find it uncomfortable telling a male manager. Because it's you're talking to a male as opposed to a female. Maybe they don't think that they will understand, but actually I think a lot of guys do. A lot of guys are dads, and so they've been through it themselves, but as a dad. So I think sometimes it's maybe reminding the individual that I know they're a guy, but they understand.
Yeah, they do get it.
They do understand, and
Yeah.
to try and reassure them that they're going to be supported either way.
Yeah.
Sometimes HR will offer to go to that meeting as well, so it feels like there's someone else there. There's that support. It's not ganging up on the manager, but it's just
no, but it's a kind of a friendly, like trusted option if you did feel uncomfortable. I suppose. So that is something.
And HR should be able to advise of the processes and policies and next steps and things like that in terms of that business. So if you're fortunate enough to have in-house HR. If you don't have in-house HR, and so there isn't that person or people you can speak to, then I would suggest if you really feel uncomfortable speaking to your line manager, is speaking to another manager, and maybe asking for some advice on how to approach it. I think as well it's about being honest with your manager about how you're feeling. So, I want to share some news with you that I'm really excited about or that I'm really nervous about, and I hope that, you'll support me in my news. And this is my news, I'm expecting a baby. And I think if you're genuine with how you present the information and you're not shouting at them saying, "Oi, I'm pregnant. What are you going to do about it?" Then, I think if we're understanding that that person might feel uncomfortable as well, then that's you're going to get the best outcome in terms of the support back. And I think if you're clear with what your needs are at that moment in time, those needs may change, obviously, as the pregnancy progresses. But I think if you're honest about how you're feeling and this is the support I need from you right now, and you're clear again in what you want and what you need.
And I suppose if I was to come at it from a manager and leader perspective, I think one of the key things is when someone does tell you is no matter what, so no matter what your journey to motherhood looks like, if you're coming at it from a female perspective or even a father perspective, is just to say congratulations.
Yes.
Whatever that looks like, I think that needs to be a word that comes out of your mouth. I just think it's really important. Just even, whether that's just blown your mind because you're about to lose the best person you have in your company, whatever that looks like to you, you need to put all of that to one side and go, actually, congratulations. And it might be that, if you aren't someone that's familiar with all the policies and all of that sort of thing, this might be the first time as a small business that you've had to deal with this. So I think for me, it's, saying congratulations, I think putting their needs, like you say, first, and just finding out, okay, is there anything you need like at the moment? And if then you aren't sure, is actually just to pause that conversation. And don't feel the pressure that you've got to have all of that conversation about everything and everything that's going to happen like right now. I think sometimes it can be a bit of a, you've got to take on that news a bit as well and actually give yourself a bit of a break that this might be a bit of a big news for your company, depending on what that looks like for them. And if it is a bit of a blow, perhaps, because they're like, oh gosh, what am I going to do? Is to try not to show that to that person. And actually, if you need to kind of go away and have take yourself away and just be able to go, okay, that's, this is great, congratulations. Let's understand what your needs look like. And then kind of come back and reschedule another conversation.
Absolutely. I think you're 100% right there. I think the initial conversation where someone's told you that they're pregnant, there should be no work discussion in that first meeting. It should be all about congratulations, because the amount of times I've heard that conversation and the manager hasn't said congratulations or how are you feeling. I think that's another one. So how are you feeling? How can we support you? Just general, like, how are you feeling about it? How's the person feeling? I think that's really important. And then, like you say, come back, because someone is, if they're telling you at 12 weeks pregnant, 12 weeks I'm pregnant, then you're not going to know when you want to go off. I changed my mind about 10 times.
Fair enough.
So I think people don't know straight away when they
what they want to
what
do
they want and stuff. So I just think, come back to that. Once they've got their map, so map B1 is probably a really important thing.
Oh yeah, we haven't talked about map B1
No,
actually, because I had no idea what that was. I was like, what is this
a
map B1? What does this mean?
It's very important. Little slip of
Little
paper.
tiny slip of paper, yeah.
Say, don't lose.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm definitely going to lose that.
Yeah.
Tip to mums, take a photo of it as soon as you get
I
it.
did. I remember I did that.
Photo.
Yeah, because I was useless. Yeah.
Oh my god, like guarding.
So let's go back to basics. So
yeah.
Where does that map B1 come from?
Yeah, so your midwife will give you the map B1. So it is literally a slip of paper they rip out of a book, isn't it?
Yeah.
That they give to you. And that piece of paper confirms your expected due date.
Right, okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that thing, and I think you get it at around 20 weeks. Yeah. I think that can vary, obviously, depending on your midwife appointments, but it becomes sort of 20 to 24 weeks. I think usually just after your 20-week scan, because your 20-week scan, you'd have your like dating scan and everything.
Yes, you do.
And you get confirmation, all that kind of stuff. So they can check again then. So I think it was I had mine, I think at like 21 and then 23 weeks. So I think it comes some point there, but you need it to be able to give to your employer.
Is it like a legal confirmation effectively that you're pregnant?
Yes,
or,
basically. Yeah. The legal kind of confirmation of you're pregnant and this is the date that we expect the baby to be born. So this is I think you remember at the beginning when we talked about when you have to tell your employer at 25 weeks. So that kind of aligns with the MAP B1.
Okay, yeah.
So you should give your MAP B1 to your employer as soon as you get it. Okay. But yes, definitely take a photo of it. Because then that is what then tells your employer when you're due. So when your maternity leave is going to, that's sort of what you use then to meet your dates up with. And if you do need to be your maternity leave start date to be forced because you're unwell, or if you do need to amend dates and things, it will be based on that sort of thing.
So should we do a bit of a wrap up?
Yeah.
Because we have covered off a lot and it's been really great. So I suppose maybe let's finish with something a bit practical. So if you could tell every manager one thing about supporting someone on maternity leave or about to go on maternity leave, I suppose what would that be? Like, what would is that a tricky?
There's so many.
It's too tricky.
How do I pick one?
Yeah.
I'd say be there and be supportive. I know that's kind of two, but I think be there, be present with them in this journey, because it's the most precious time, but it's a precious time, but also lots of people deal with it very differently. So pregnancy is very unique to individuals, and so I think you don't know if someone's going to be. Some people love it. Yeah. To be honest,
and they're really excited by it.
I'm not bothered about being pregnant. The baby bit was great, but the pregnancy bit was like, oh, this can like do one.
Yeah.
But some people love being pregnant, and that's great. And fair play. If you love it, go for it.
Fine.
Some people have really complicated pregnancies, other people don't. So I think be there and be present with them so that you can understand and try and empathise with how they're feeling. Yeah. And just be supportive.
I suppose not making assumptions about how they're feeling,
which
again it feels like it's really common sense. Yeah. But it's surprising, I think, how many managers I've come across that have really tripped up on some of these such small things, like making an assumption that they're really excited or making it, when actually they might just be someone's really nervous about it or nervous about losing the baby and all those sort of things. Again, depending on what those things have looked like.
Yeah, exactly. And some people are thinking like more of second time pregnancies as well. They might have had a really traumatic first pregnancy and birth. Yeah. And so they are petrified second time round. Yeah. Some people are much more relaxed. Some people deal with things in life in all different ways.
Yes.
And you just can't assume, like you say. So I think it's just, if you're there with them and you're just trying to understand from them, then you can't go far wrong, because if you know how they're feeling, you can try and do your best by them and support them in a way that's appropriate to how they're feeling.
And I think that finishes off really nicely, because again, it just shows, doesn't it, that yes, you've got to be doing all of those tick box HR stuff. Yeah. But actually to not be afraid about that conversation. because actually, as long as you're, like you said, showing support, that's the best. That, and you're doing your best.
You're doing your best.
You know, you are doing your best.
And if you have got a policy, like follow the policy. And I think that's, if you've got a good maternity family policy, that's going to provide you with the practical guidance the whole way through. So use that as a bit of a Bible if you can. If you haven't got one, then maybe consider implementing one, because then that's going to mean that you've got this, you know.
Okay, Amy. So, is that something that Arete HR could offer? So, if you are a small business and you maybe don't have these things in place, perhaps it might be your first employee that's going on maternity leave. Is that something that you could support them?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's you know, I've worked with quite a few businesses now on implementing family policies. So we sit down, we go through what that looks like for you as a business. Different businesses have different requirements, different ways to approach it. Yeah, absolutely. And I will want to support in different ways. Some people want to throw every, you know, gift and novelty at a pregnancy they possibly can. Others want to provide more financial support. So it just depends on the business. So we sit down and we've gone through and built quite a few bespoke policies. We can help with risk assessments for pregnancy, and then procedures and guidance and stuff, and help with, you know, your managers. And I know that's obviously something that you're really passionate about, is, you know, the coaching and support for people. So that's exactly the sorts of things we can do.
Amazing. So what Arete HR and Authentic Growth are now starting to do is collaborate on this with an authentic recognition program. So trying to recognise how valuable parents are for you in the workplace. So not only trying to look at what you have in place to support parents, but also help with your managers and leaders in how to understand and manage that transition. So that's where I'll come in, and like you say, trying to help with how to have those conversations. But also offering you know, really specific maternity coaching. It might be that if you are a business that, you know, you want to offer that more enhanced offer, then it might be that you say, do you know what, I want to bring in an external maternity coach to help support with well-being, confidence, from the beginning right through to when they come back. So so that is also something that we can look to offer as well. So we're going to wrap up our first episode. So I guess it's kind of thank you for listening. And if you are about to go on leave, or you're about to you know, assist someone with that transition and going on maternity leave, then, you know, drop us a message and let us know if we can help. And hopefully this has just been a really helpful, honest chat to kind of listen to and understand.
Hope so.
Thank you for joining me. Thank you very much.
Cheers.